Okay, here is the next video lecture on social inequality. This was the last slide that we saw. So now we're moving into the idea of social class. And I can't highlight enough the importance with this video lecture series, but really all of them, of reading your textbook, because these lectures are meant to supplement the book readings and the other readings that I'm giving you. So just want to kind of get that in. Social classes in the United States. We live in a class system. What does that mean? Well, your book talks about it, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit here. A class system is a social stratification system based upon birth as well as achievement. Now, within our society, we live in a class system where you have the ability, individuals, families have the ability to kind of go up and down a little bit in the class system. Just because you're born in the lower class doesn't mean that you have to stay there forever. Conversely, people who are born into the upper class aren't guaranteed that they will stay in the upper class forever either. So there is some ability for movement. When you look at other parts of the world, not every part of the world, not every culture has a class system in place. In some places, such as India, you're basically born into a specific caste or a class, whatever you want to call it, and you can't get out of that. If you're born in the lower caste, you stay there. No matter how smart, intelligent, good-looking, whatever that you are, you can't get out. So you have a lot of different ways. There are a lot of different ways we could go about dividing out the class system in the United States. I'm going to choose the simplest way because I like easy. I'm kind of a simple guy. Your book may do this a little differently, but you're going to get the idea. Basically, we have the upper class, the middle class, the working class, and then the lower class. And then we can divide each of these classes out a little bit more. And in sociology, what we know to be true is that within each social class there are specific characteristics that unite the people in those classes. So what is social class? We have a definition of class system or a social class system. But what is that? Well, sociologists define social class as a large group of people who rank closely to one another in terms of wealth, power, and prestige. So for example, in the upper class, people who belong to and in the upper class in this country share some things in common. They tend to be wealthier. They tend to command more power. They own businesses. They influence other people. They're prestigious. They're seen as being important. And they're offered and rather afforded a lot of status. I don't know if you can read the cartoon. I'll read it to you just in case you can't make it out here. You've got the poor woman over here on this side of the cliff who says, "How come you're rich and I'm poor?" So she's yelling across to the rich guy. And the rich guy says, "Well, Mom and Dad have highly paid jobs, and they're working on that very problem." So, again, we're going to try to start exploring why it is that some people are rich and why some people are poor. It's not simply a choice that we make. We'll start with the upper class, and I hope that you can make this out. I think you can. With the upper class, there's a couple ways to divide that out. This is the top tier of the class system. Now, just some facts. I won't read them all to you. You can kind of pause this and kind of take notes here as you want. We're talking about the top 5% of the population. People in the upper class collectively earn at least, and some way, way more, but at least $200,000 per year. The income comes from inherited wealth, stocks, bonds, real estate, investments. Historically, people in the upper class are largely Caucasian. The richest 400 people in the United States are worth between $950 million and $50 billion with a B dollars. Now, we'll start with the upper class. As you're reading in your book, and I'm going to give you some information here, we're going to find that people in the very, very top tier of the upper class have some things in common. In the upper class, these folks are typically referred to as blue bloods. They're living off of inherited money. Some people in the upper class do work, but they don't have to. Names like DuPont, Rockefeller, those names kind of ring a bell. These people belong to the upper class. I remember being in grade school, and Senator J. Rockefeller came into our classroom, and he was telling a story to us. I never will forget this, about wealth. He told a story about how his father said to him, "Son, there's two different ways you can amass your wealth. I can either give it to you, or you can go out and earn it on your own." Guess what he picked? Now, I think J. Rockefeller was pretty, was a pretty nice man. I talked to him a couple of times in my life and was very humble and very nice to me. But he told that story, and it does illustrate, if you're lucky enough to be born into the upper class, you might live in exclusive neighborhoods. You're a part of less than 1% of the U.S. population. You have the opportunity to complete formal education at very high prestige colleges. Then you have some examples of people in the upper class. Bill Gates, last time I did my research, was worth $60 billion. I think he's worth a little more than that now. Jim Walton, when he was alive, was worth approximately $20 to $25 billion before he died. Now his sons sort of command the Walmart empire, and they're worth billions of dollars apiece. You have the lower upper class. Now most people in the upper class, most upper class people in the U.S. actually fall within the lower rung of the upper class. Now these are still people who are rich, but these are the working rich. These are people who either amass their fortunes by writing books, movies, playing sports, whatever. They weren't just handed, or didn't just have the opportunity to have their wealth handed to them. So they get their money by earning rather than inheriting. Some examples of the lower upper class. I know we're going to England a little bit with some of these, but you've got the Queen of England, J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author, many professional athletes like Kobe Bryant, for example, Tiger Woods, you kind of see there, have earned their wealth through sports and through endorsements. Approximately 4% of the population falls there. Then we get to the middle class, and we'll divide the middle class a couple ways as well. Most of us fall here, 40 to 45% of the U.S. population. You're going to start to see some trends, and again, you can kind of pause this video and kind of write some of this stuff down as we're going. Tremendous influence on culture, because most people are in the middle class. Television shows, movies, any television show, movie that you can think of is probably set within the middle class or geared to middle class values. Again, because most people in this country watching TV are in the middle class. You have a lot more racial and ethnic diversity than you have in the upper class. In the upper classes, you still have largely Caucasian, still largely older white people. In the middle class, you get more racial and ethnic diversity. In fact, we've seen African Americans begin to explode into the middle class structure from the lower classes in the last 15 to 20 years. Now, in the upper middle class, family income is between $113,000 and $200,000 per year. Comfortable homes in kind of expensive areas. They may own several automobiles. 2/3 graduate from college. Postgraduate degrees are also very common. High prestige occupations such as doctors, lawyers, etc. Is very common. Those occupations are very common. And individuals in the upper middle class influence local political affairs, unlike people in the upper class who can influence national or international affairs. So we start to see some trends. You get into the average middle class, people who fall squarely within the middle or in the middle of the class structure. They're earning between around $50,000 and $113,000 per year. Less prestigious white-collar jobs like middle managers, teachers, etc. People here can build up small wealth over a lifetime. They may have a home, a retirement account. Most will graduate from high school. 50%, or half, will complete a college degree at a less expensive state school. So we're starting to notice some trends as we move down the class structure. As we move down the class structure, we see less people graduating from high school and college. We see, more problems with health. Health concerns become a real issue. We see some other things that we'll talk about as well. You have the working class moving another step down the class structure. 1/3 of the population in this country falls in this class. So now we're moving away from white-collar jobs, whereas we talked about before, command higher prestige, and we're moving into lower prestige jobs that pay less money. You can see if you're a family of 4 and you're making $28,000 a year, it's going to be tough if there's a health problem. It's going to be tough if someone gets laid off. It's going to be tough anyway, even if conditions are perfect. It's going to be very hard to make it financially. People in the working class in this country have little to no wealth. They are more vulnerable to financial problems caused by unemployment or illness. These jobs offer fewer benefits, medical insurance, and pension plans. 2/3 own their own homes. So less people own their own homes the more we move down the class structure, as you can see. Only 1/3 even attend college, much less graduate. So we're seeing, again, trends with home ownership, health, and educational attainment. There's definitely a relationship between those relationships between those variables and class, social class. Then we get to the lower class. 20% of the population resides here. Life is very insecure and quite difficult. In 2008, 40 million people were defined as being poor, also referred to as the working poor, or people in the lower class. Again, even more eye-opening statistics. Only half graduate from high school. So is that to say that people who are poor or in the lower class just are not as intelligent, or they're just not as motivated, or they're just not quite as good as people in the middle class? Some people would say that, but maybe a lot of it has to do with the social environment. Again, I've said it before, if you're very intelligent and you're endowed with wonderful ability to succeed in life, but you're born into a situation where there's abject poverty and school is just not a priority because you're more worried about eating and staying alive from one day to the next, you're probably not going to do well in school. You're not going to do well on a standardized test. You may not even go to college, much less high school. So, and 45% own their own homes in the least desirable neighborhoods, often located in inner cities and rural areas of the United States. So we're going to call that the end of this part. Thanks.